Hey everybody, today we are talking about The Second Journey by Joel Bigman. To start, I wanted to say thank you to Earnshaw Books for giving me a copy of The Second Journey to enjoy. If you saw my previous video from last year on Journey to the West, this is actually like a follow-up of that story. So I really enjoyed Journey to the West, where we are following Monkey, who is Sun Wukong, and he is trying to get enlightenment and to gain true merit after being born from a stone and wreaking a lot of havoc, trying to prove to heaven that he could be immortal and that he could be amazing and the best and learn all these magical powers and become the greatest that he could be. And along the way he makes a lot of mistakes in that journey, and the journey to the West is supposed to be his redemption to get better. And so there was a lot of crazy stories of all the different adventures and things that happened during that time. And the second journey, it takes place after the journey to the West has already happened. There's been some time all as well, and now we are joining our characters again, minus a few. We are not seeing Sandy in this book, but we are going to be having our monk go on another journey with Monkey as well as Pigsy. And Monkey and Pigsy did not have to join him on this journey, but they really wanted to. And so they're there for support. This journey is going to be going even farther west than they did in the first journey. And it is so that they can get more knowledge and hopefully find a sage to bring with them back to the east to teach some people who actually are in the east but are learning different scriptures and different worshiping different gods and things than what they are currently doing in the east. And because our monk could not fully read these, he was asked to go back and try to find someone who could and return with them. And so essentially this story that we have here is to see if he can find someone who's willing to come and teach their people that have ended up in the East. And so overall, I thought it was a really fun, adventurous book to if you wanted to read more with these characters, with Monkey and Pigsy, and then introducing new characters as well that they meet along the way that become their companions and go with them even further and help them to understand the scriptures and the language that they don't fully know. And it's nice to be back kind of in that world where, of course, it's not going to be exactly the same this time because they don't have all these trials that they have to go through. They had to go through over 80 trials. This journey it's going to be difficult, but in a different way. There's not going to be a bunch of demons they have to fight. However, there are a few that they do run into, and so we do still have some battles, kind of like scenes like that, where they have to use their wits and their strength to overcome so that they can continue to try to find the correct, proper person who's going to be the sage to take back home with them. And hopefully they will be able to be willing to leave their land to go to a brand new land and teach the people there and help them interpret the scriptures for their teachings. And I did think it was interesting to read about these things because we're getting this Chinese culture, but then we are also getting the Jewish culture. We are also getting a lot of stories like Sage Moses is there and all the things that he did for his people. And so it's starting to be like where we're meshing these two different kinds of cultures together, religious cultures. And I think that was really interesting because I was able to grasp more of those stories than growing up with the Chinese stories. So being able to see both of them and have this familiarity to say, oh, I remember learning about this growing up in church. Like these are stories that are that make more sense to me from what I grew up with. And so being able to see how Monkey and Pigsy like are learning about these new stories and how they differ from their stories where it's like, oh, we have this one deity, but then in China there's multiple deities, and so there's like these contrasts, while at the same time similarities of following scripture and following rules and certain things that you're taught as you are growing up that you follow. For example, Pigsy and Monkey and all of our main characters, our monk, they all are vegetarians, and so everywhere they go, they do that. And one of the characters they meet, whose name is Bear, because he's really strong, he doesn't really understand why they don't eat meat, but he's like, well, we don't eat pork, so you don't have to worry about that. Like, Pigsy doesn't have to worry about that. But at the same time, they still eat different kinds of meats and things like that. And so it's interesting for them to be able to respectfully relay, this is what I do that's different than you, and that's okay, and here's what we do. In regards to being respectful and stuff, one of the things that was very interesting was that we were noticing that a lot of the people in the far west were very argumentative, and they would have a one rule about like the Sabbath, where you're not supposed to do certain things on that day. It's supposed to be a resting day. So how can you kind of get around, like, is there any loopholes to these rules where you can still do certain things but it doesn't count against breaking the rules of the Sabbath? And then they argue about it. Like, everyone argues about, well, that's okay, oh no, that wouldn't work, that wouldn't be okay. And they just have this different kind of a way of resolving things. They still talk through things and argue a lot, versus just saying, nope, this is it, and that's the only way to go about this situation. And so yeah, just seeing like those differences and things, I think that was really fun. I do feel this was a bit shorter in terms of, like, Journey to the West is very long, but the translated version that I read it's still like over 300 pages. This book is under 300 pages, and so I feel like some of the stories could have been a little bit longer. Like the adventures, sometimes it was like, this happened, 100 people were following them, Monkey came up with a solution, now the people aren't following them anymore. And it was like all of it happened in the span of like a page or maybe 2 pages. And you're like, oh, that was really like anticlimactic. So I feel like some of the journeys could have lasted a little bit longer, and maybe had a little bit more details, and maybe thrown in some things that maybe could have been more challenging for Monkey, which is hard because not many things are a challenge for him anyway. So yeah, I do think maybe some of the stories could have gone on a little longer. There's also this thing that they did at the like very end of every chapter that was like, what's going to happen next? Well, let's find out in the next chapter, shall we? And then you read the next chapter to find out. And I like that because it reminded me of how Journey to the West did that, but they only did it after like a couple chapters would go on before they'd use that tactic again. And in this story, it happened after every single chapter. And I feel like it kind of loses its flair when it's every chapter that uses that to introduce the next chapter, versus just doing it a few times and then like then it just goes to the next chapter, and then a couple chapters later you see that again, where it's like, I wonder what our other travelers are doing in the meantime, let's find out in the next chapter. Like, if it didn't happen after every chapter, to me, I think it would have been like more fun of using that than using it after every single chapter. But again, that's pretty nitpicky of just like personal preference for that I noticed, because at first I was like, oh, that's cool, they're using this same thing that they used in Journey to the West. But then when I saw it after every chapter, I was like, oh. And then I just kind of came to expect it every time, and then it didn't have that same height of like, oh, this is like cool that they're doing this, like, if that makes sense. But overall, I enjoyed being able to get back into that world of having Monkey and Pigsy and Tripitaka, but we don't call him Tripitaka in this that's what he was called in the other story, our monk, and now he goes by his actual name, which I just feel like I'm gonna say it wrong, which is why I've just been calling him our monk. But which is actually an interesting thing, because there is a part in the story too where someone is introduced, I think it's him actually, that he introduces himself, and the other character says, oh, I'm sorry, I have trouble saying your name. And I just think, oh, well, that's a respectful way to say, I'm sorry if I get your name wrong, because being from 2 different sides of the world, we're not always going to be able to pronounce things properly. And so I think it's interesting that that was also like noted in the book too. But anyways, if you've watched or if you've read Journey to the West already, and you would like kind of to dive back in with those characters, diving into different types of cultures rather than just strictly Chinese, then I think that you would enjoy reading this again, so that you can visit those characters again, which were very fun. I just find them very fun, and I like how sometimes you could see that mischievousness wanting to come back out of Monkey, but he can control it so much better now that he reached true enlightenment. And so I just think that was like a neat thing. So yeah, pick it up if you find it interesting. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.